Welcome to today's SHeconomy. I'm very happy that we can have another great female leader with us, an expert and a wonderful professional, Joanne Hunger from Western Union. Thank you very much for offering to share all your views and experience with us. I'm extremely happy. Also, before I go into some housekeeping details, I would give our president, Michael Schmidt, the floor to just say a brief hello. It's his first time in SHeconomy, but he couldn't resist Joanne's invitation to, will you be there if I speak? So, Michael.
Well, thank you very much, Ilka. And I said some 2 minutes ago, after more than 30 years of marriage, no is not an option. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad to be here. And it wouldn't take long, just a minute, but I wanted to share my views on SHeconomy and this format. You know, when I took office some 2.5 years ago, or 3 years ago now, I described the British Chamber of Commerce in Germany as an old boys' dinner club. And I said, we need to change things. We need to get younger. We need to get more females on board and playing an active role. And we need to have different formats in order to satisfy the needs of our members and to be more attractive. And when I look back for the next 2 to 3 years, I think we've achieved a lot. And this is not at least due to Ilka's initiatives. And one of these initiatives, one of these many initiatives, is SHeconomy. And I think it pays into all of our strategic targets. And I'm more than happy to see so many people attending this format and seeing SHeconomy becoming a very, very successful format. So I want to stop there. I'm very pleased to see Joanne here. Joanne, from my side, very warm welcome, and back to Ilka. Thank you very much and enjoy the meeting.
Thank you, Michael. And I have to say that he is really a supporter of female leadership and giving us the floor and giving me and my team the room to do so. For the housekeeping, Joanne asked us to just, if you're willing and brave enough to switch your cameras on even during her speeches and during her topics, because she wants to see the interaction and we want to see the faces, if they laugh, if they cry, if they run away. So you're invited to open up your cameras during the session. This session will also be a little different because Joanne said she has 3 topics which she thinks is very important, and we'll cut the session in 3 topics. The first theme will be the value of mentor sponsors in her leadership journey. The second theme will be the value of networks in entrepreneurship and startups. So she sees what she's done in Vienna as a part of a startup. So very young, Michael. And the last one is the value of gender balance in leadership teams. I think all 3, would be enough for more than an hour length. And Joanne said that we should do a short Q&A after each topic, and then start a discussion after all 3 among all of us. So share your views. Joanne is very keen to hear what you have to say about what her experiences are, or share your experiences in your teams. Now, for those who haven't read her CV yet, let me introduce her very briefly. She's the Director of Business Solutions for Western Union for Central Europe and Ireland. This high-profile role includes optimism, the B2B sales strategy by driven revenue growth, and leading products and people development to support international trading businesses across the region. Originally, she's from Derry in Northern Ireland. Joanne completed her degree and postgraduate studies at Sheffield University and Vienna University of Economics and Business in Austria. She has a proven track record of developing further future leaders and motivating teams in international locations, having previously held a number of leadership roles with the Royal Bank of Scotland within corporate banking UK. In 2012, she moved to Vienna to set up Western Union's business brand in Austria. And since then, the German-Irish markets. I think this is the startup part. You described it like that. She's dedicated to growing the Western Union brand through PR and marketing, and shares a significant expertise in international banking, client relationship management, and client acquisition in many thought leadership articles and presentations. She's a passionate believer in developing and growing business networks by formally taking an active role in empowering women as chair of Women in Banking and Finance in Bristol, UK. And in her spare time, she runs a business network in Austria for the professional Irish community. She holds the European Certificate in Coaching and Mentoring. So the expert in all the topics I've mentioned before. So I don't want to steal more time from you, Joanne. The floor is yours.
Ilka and Michael and the British Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much indeed for this really warm welcome. And after all of that, I'm not really sure where to start. But there's a couple of pieces that I'm really excited about hearing from you all on the team and sharing, first of all, a little bit of my journey. Maybe before I start on the leadership journey, a couple of points to the key influencers that played a really important role in my life. So as you heard Ilka mention there, I was brought up in the 70s in Northern Ireland, in a very strong, I guess, political and societal influence. But particularly, I think my home life had a very important part to play in the role where I see myself now. I was the youngest of 6 children and one of 5 daughters. So when we talk about gender balance, certainly as I look into my leadership experience, it was definitely put on its head when I was brought up with 5 very, very strong women and one per brother who's probably still suffering from that today. But I would say that even though my mother wasn't a professional herself, she had a really big influence in all of us getting our education and getting a career. And it played a really big part for us as we move forward. And if I look on the other side, my father, who was a strong, manager in his field at the time, I often could hear him coming home and just talking about experiences that happened on his day-to-day life. And, back in Northern Ireland then, I think, there was quite a polarized community then. And he started coming back, not realizing there's such words like we use now, like unconscious bias. But he was talking about the importance of actually putting your own beliefs a time aside and making sure that everybody had a voice to get true teamwork within your own organization. And he also used to refer sometimes to the silent contributors. We often, it's often the people who shout loudest, often's voice gets heard. And I think sometimes when you're putting teams together, there's a lot of inspiration that can come from those people who perhaps don't speak up. So part of this piece today, I've been able to look at some of you and ask you and encourage you to be interactive. I think there's so much power that I can learn from you when I hear your feedback. So to talk a little bit about my leadership journey, there's probably 2 key events that I'd like to share with you in this first section. The first one was about 10 years, I think, into my career. So as you heard Ilka mention, I joined the Royal Bank of Scotland in business and commercial and corporate banking. And I guess I can describe myself as an individual contributor at that time. And then after 10 years of working for the organisation in different branches in different parts of the UK, I landed my first leadership role. And, I was so enthusiastic and so excited that I could get the chance to not just deliver for myself, but now to deliver through teams and have those collective goals. But there was no real rule book, if I'm honest, or a way that would show me exactly how to go forward. So I got the opportunity about 3 months into the role to meet with an executive of the Royal Bank of Scotland at that time. And where he complimented me on passion and excitement for the role and enthusiasm for all things business, he also gave me one piece of advice. And he took the opportunity at that time to actually tell me that I reminded him of a bit like a general going into army, you know, and I was busy running up the hill with my troops and leading them into battle, full pace ahead. And he asked me, or suggested to me, that maybe once in a while I might want to just stop and pause and look back and check if my troops were still there. And, you know, in some of my early leadership times, I did that, and I can't say that they were always there. So there was a real lesson there, listening, particularly my father, and he heard those words in my ears about these silent contributors. There was often a real experience for me there to realize that I think, you know, the teams come with you and they don't go behind you. He also gave me a second gift that day, probably one of the most significant things in the topic for this first theme tonight. And this was giving me the chance to have a mentor. He recommended, as a young leader back then, navigating through an international organization such as RBS. And to give you a feel, back then RBS was the 5th biggest bank in the world, so it was huge. And he gave me the opportunity to have a female mentor, and she was the COO, so the Chief Operating Officer of RBS. And I got the chance to meet her. And that was 15 years ago, and I'm really proud to say she's actually still my mentor to this day. And some of the things, the value that I got from that, not just helping me to navigate through the organization, giving me the tips and the tricks and how to best manage myself, and giving me the confidence in taking some strong decisions. What she also did for me was help me through some very, very lonely journeys. And I think as we all move higher up in the leadership, whether you're an aspiring leader or if you're a leader of leaders, and as you move up throughout organizations, it can get lonely. And having someone to pick up the phone and remind you of your capabilities and remind you to be brave and take those decisions, I think is really, really powerful. And I cannot recommend it highly enough. Whether you know, I'm a mentor myself for many, but I'm also being mentored and learning all the time. The second event, I think, for my leadership, and this piece around mentors that I want to share with you, I'll fast forward a couple of years now. And for those of you who've got good memories for dates, I'll bring you to the year 2008. And I then landed myself with what I thought an even shinier job. And it was teams of teams. And I had then become a leader of leaders, multiple locations, multiple people, multiple dollars of revenue, and so on. And I was so excited at where I had got to at this part of my career. And then I remember the day of the 8th of October 2008. And this was the day when the British government had to step in to bail out the Royal Bank of Scotland to protect them from the collapse. And as a young leader then, with all of that responsibility for the people, for the customers, for the brand itself, it weighed very heavily on my shoulders. And I felt very fortunate. The key things that mentor, the gifts that mentor had given me while I built up to that day and the subsequent days and weeks and months that followed, was to build a very strong team around you and with you. I want to call it the circle of trust. And this is the piece where your team can recognize the direction and work with you in the direction that you're going with your people, but they'll also help you to recognize your blind spots. And trust me, I have many. But opening that and sharing it with you in a very critical way, but still knowing when you go out there, whether it's into battle or taking your team into the, you know, trying to dig yourself out of the trenches, you know that those people are with you 100%. And these gifts and building that network of people around you is hugely powerful. That's the first thing I want to say that I learned. The second, as I referenced earlier, that listening piece. There are so many people, particularly in times of crisis, whether it was that one of 2008 or the global pandemic that we see now, people have a lot of fears, but also ideas and inspiration sitting within them. And as I say, I always see that I find some of the best inspiration comes from not always the most loudest of people. And to conclude for this part, it's back to that mentor and sponsor piece. If you've ever had the privilege of having a mentor, or you have the gift of being a mentor for someone else, it is probably one of the most rewarding things I think you can do. I just want to move the dial a little bit more into the recent past, shall I say now. And this is, as Ilke rightly titled it, I wanted to talk about entrepreneurship and the value of networks. I mean, we're sitting in one now, and you can feel the energy already with the feedback so far. So just to put it into context, I had remained with RBS for 4 years following that crazy days of 2008. And probably part of my role very much then was very much focused on the rebuilding, let's say, and repairing of the pieces in the organization. And then I had the opportunity with my current employer, Western Union, to come and cross the continent and to set up in Austria and help them set up a new business branch then called Western Union Business Solutions. And for those of you who will know Western Union, the C2C brand is so globally famous, you know, where we support individuals in transferring money in 200 countries around the world. But a few years before the 2012 date when I came here, the B2B brand was founded. And this was working together with international payments, with SMEs, with corporates, so the importers, with exporters, financial institutions, NGOs, all of that sort. And they had many offices around the world, but they were really looking at accelerating that growth and opening up in new markets. So there I was, and my job was to do such a thing in Austria. I was no stranger to Austria, as you heard. I had spent part of my postgraduate in Vienna. But from, perhaps if I look back, I mean, it was 15 or so years since I'd been there, and I didn't really have the language, to say the least. I think, you know, I remember being able to order a nice melange or a Valanger in these wonderful Viennese coffee houses, but that was probably as far as it went. So coming over there, I felt this initial, perhaps, disability, shall I say, from a language perspective, and also from a network piece. Had I have had the same opportunity to set up a business solutions in the UK, for example, I would have had all of these contacts that were already available for me and at the end of the phone. So when I came to Austria, I was presented with this challenge, and where do you start? My tasks effectively was to look first of all at what products and services were available and how could they translate into the Austrian B2B market, what industries would be interested in what we're doing, and then of course, how do you market that, how do you bring that to market, and probably most important of all is how do you get people, or what sort of people do you need to build up such a, you know, an environment that would run from end to end, from, you know, finding the client and getting the products right through to delivering the service. So my boss at the time, when I arrived in Austria, we met and I said to him, have you got a bit of a job description, you know, to help me start? And I remember him, you know, scrolling through his notebook, and he ripped out a piece of paper from his notebook. It was a blank piece of paper, and he picked out a pen and he gave me a blank piece of paper and a pen and said, write one. And that was probably one of the most exciting things, frightening but exciting things that ever happened to me. And that effectively, I mean, I say it's entrepreneurship, it was setting up a business, but of course I had the power of the Western Union brand behind me. So there was a win-win there for me and a bit of a safety net. But still, that blank piece of paper was mine to fill. And the second part of what I want to share with you now was the importance of building networks. So I started and took every opportunity for breakfast, for lunches, for dinners, for networking events, if they were industry associations, Chamber of Commerce, you know, countrywide associations, things just like the BCCG that give you the opportunity to go and explore in the local business community and talk to everybody you possibly can to learn as much as you can about how the business works. And it was hugely different to my experience in the UK. But I was really surprised at how welcoming everyone was and was prepared to share with me all of that information. And I would say on the one side, it's certainly all those breakfasts and lunches and dinners probably really didn't help my waistline very well. But what it did do on the other side was it not only gave me the insight for me representing Western Union and setting up this brand here, but it also gave me what I want to call critical friends. And I think that's something that, we've heard earlier on, that there was feedback for me as a person, building the brand, building the teams. It was a great opportunity for me to check in every once in a while to see how I'm doing. And I cannot really emphasize the value of these networks enough. And a last piece I want to share, after a couple of years, and as the business really started running and functioning well, and all of these people that I managed to bring into the organization, the gift I could then give to them, just like we talked about the mentoring, was all of these connections that I'd spent time building up with all of these networks, your own private networks and all the associations that exist today. And whilst they could take that on and run in Austria, it gave me the opportunity to then go and turn my sights to Germany. And, as someone from a mother tongue English speaking environment, I made the mistake of assuming just because Austria and Germany share the same language, perhaps everything works exactly the same. And it was, again, getting the opportunity with often cousin or sister networks that the Austrian networks introduced me when I moved into Germany. The one blind spot that I had in my own context was assuming that we can manage the whole of the Austrian region out of Vienna, and that my blind spot was that I thought I could do the same out of just one region in Germany. So we have our headquarters in Frankfurt, and I was really privileged that the organisation gave me a bit of a free rein to travel the lengths and breadths of Germany and using all of these networks. And one of the most significant things that came out of my time was the importance of, having local people in the local business communities and the absolute power of those networks. And from that, it no longer just remained Frankfurt. I started putting people in different regions throughout Germany, and it was a really proud moment for me in June when we opened a new office in Hamburg. Despite the lockdown, despite the pandemic we were seeing, it was a really proud moment to be able to open up something else there, which was the most recent one. And now I think to pass out to the people here on the call, I talk about the importance of networks, and here we are sitting doing the same thing, but just in a virtual piece. And what I want to say, it's incredible really to just think back in a few months, we were doing this, over some food and a glass of wine together, and how we've all been able to transition into be able to do this and still sharing our experiences and thoughts in an environment like this. It's incredible really, how we can do such a thing. And back to your initial question, Ilka, what do you do in times of crisis? Talk, communicate. And I feel hugely grateful and really empowered that, I think networks and chambers and associations like yourself is enabling this to happen. We're zoomed out sometimes, of course, by the end of the day, and sometimes it's a bit difficult to stare at a screen again in the evening. But for me personally, all of these critical friends and people who help me through my journey every day, I really take the time to maybe make a personal note to myself to make sure I check in with those. If it's not just in a network like this, but in a more personal basis, to do so and check in with those people who will make a difference to you and in your career.
Thank you so much, Joanne. How do you go about, you've really enjoyed mentoring from a COO. What do you do? How do you, make yourself available for other young executives in Western Union? The Chamber has a network that's called Young British Chamber. Do you have an institution in Western Union? Do you do this one-on-one? Do you also encourage others to pick up somebody in line to help them go their way, or make potential analysts? How do you do that?
So I'm delighted that you mentioned Western Union and what do we do there. That segues really nicely into the third piece, which I'll share a little bit about what we do as an organisation. For me personally, there's three things that I personally do. One of them, when I was doing my coaching and mentoring qualifications quite some years ago now, part of the assessment and getting the qualification, I had to mentor some people. Had to is the wrong word, but it was part of it. And I had a number of them then, and I was really open with them, saying, you know, I'm going to make loads of mistakes, but go with me. And some of those people that I was mentoring back then, just part of my own development, I still mentor today. So that's incredible that carries on across border, you know, across a time zone. That's really important. The second thing I think is there is also informal mentoring. And I also have people who I've connected with, be it on LinkedIn or connected it in different networks, who will say, can I pick up the phone to you next week? I've got something to run by you. And you can always be available in that formal way if you don't want to, you know, really make it extremely formal. And the third piece I'll share with you in a second is what we do as an organisation. But as a snapshot, having the you know, having women at Western Union and being able to give your experience on what you were doing and how you navigated through the organisation is something that we try and pair people up with as well. So I think you can do it in the organisation within. I still think you can do it within the industry per se, but you also have got something to say, just as a, you know, any person who wants to be able to support others.
You said, Joanne, yeah, you went out to start to meet everybody, to use every opportunity. You said you are very available on LinkedIn. Therefore, the question in today's business environment, you need to have a certain visibility. First of all, what would you advise for the visibility, LinkedIn, for example, and others? But you know, the new word is personal branding. It's not only being visible; it's what do you stand for? How do you go about that? What to advise younger or other colleagues to do?
Yeah, personal branding, of course, that works internally as well as externally hugely. I think we hear a lot now talking about thought leadership. I guess what we're doing tonight isn't really any different because everyone has something to say. And I think on the personal branding and things that you want to talk about, if there is an audience there, people are willing to listen to you, hopefully one more time. It's great to get the opportunity to do so. And personal branding and the workplace branding, you know, often the two of them can be one and the same potentially. But, you know, many people don't always stay with the one organization. So, you know, these external channels like LinkedIn and so on, I mean, I'm yet another one of these things. I'm not avid in Twitter or lots and lots of social networks. I mean, the organization has encouraged me to really do that. I would say that up until maybe this year, in all honesty, I'm just, the lights have just gone out here. We're time to go home. But I think up until this year, certainly I felt that most of the work that I was doing was on a face-to-face basis, and I really had to drag myself kicking and screaming into the digital world. I work for, an incredible organization that does lots of wonderful digital stuff, but me as a person, I think I really needed to be dragged into this. So what I would say is the opportunity that 2020 has brought to us has really brought me into that place. And listening to Sharon there, taking that opportunity to comment on something that resonated so personal to her, and how that she, put all of the fear aside and gave a personal opinion on something is hugely powerful. And that explains why there were so many reactions. And I think that's wonderful. So to sort of finalize and answer your question, I think there are multiple ways to do. I love to get opportunities to speak like this and learn from others. That's probably the thing most important for me. And
I think you are from Northern Ireland. You are UK citizen, and you're now started or years ago in Austria. Is there a difference in leadership, in the perception, in your way in the company, and interculturally? How different is the UK from Austria or other places you work with? How do you balance the intercultural differences, which some countries are more easygoing with female leaders than others, or with other difficulties? How do you manage that?
I mean, my experience has been in the financial services industry, and I think, many of us, it's absolutely no secret, this has been for many, many years a very male-dominated industry. And I can see different countries, be it the UK or be it Austria, be it Germany, I can see them moving at different levels and different paces. I think there is no right or wrong answer. Culture is culture, isn't it? Things form over years, and sometimes it's very hard to put your finger on it. But you have to feel that you can fit in. I don't think you can constantly fight against the tide. And when I've been privileged that I've been able to live in very different countries. But one thing I would always say is, if it's somewhere where I feel I'm going so far away from myself, if the culture is taking me so far where I can no longer, wonderful to get insights and to learn, but if I can no longer really make a difference because it's so different to where I am, i.e. if it was an all-female organization or an all-man organization, I wouldn't want to be marginalized. I wouldn't want to be a token woman, for example, in that place. I want to believe that I got to where I got to because of my own skills. And not because I'm a woman, but certainly, I'll talk about it in the next piece. It was really important for me to look at the organization I work for and how they deal with gender equality, and that you have to feel that you can be a part of that. That's the most important thing. That piece around gender balance, I said to you that. I think looking at the company that you work for, looking at the location. I mean, Western Union is an American financial institution, and we have branches all over the world. And I already mentioned how different even Austria and Germany is, let alone everything else. But for me, working for an organization, and when we look at leadership, we talk about the word balance. Balance is everything. Whether it's getting a decent work-life balance, I can't always confess I did that so great. Whether it's a healthy eating balance, and I can't confess that I ever did that so great either. But certainly the balance in leadership, I mean, there are millions of statistics when we talk about, when you put not just actually gender, when you're putting diversity and you have a diverse team, the power of how the different perspectives, how we problem solve, how decision-making changes. I mean, there is absolutely multiple statistics on how it influences the bottom line of a company, of having diverse leadership teams. But I also think it's about, how the organization appears to the outside world. And your question before, Ilka, was a really good point about, what's my personal brand, but equally the brand that I represent. What does that look like? And as I said, when I took the decision some years ago, moving, to Western Union, I had a look at the stats themselves. I'll share a couple with you. I mean, there's 51% of our organization are actually women, and 52% of Western Union's customers are women, which is phenomenal. And we're not quite there yet, but we're getting close to the 40% of the executive team being women. So I think we've moved really a great place. And I felt quite proud actually this year when I saw that the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index included Western Union for the first time. This is like a gold seal of approval, really, where it shows companies are publicly demonstrating the importance of equality. And that for me has a huge value. And as I said, I feel now that I think I can support that rather than fighting against the tide, which I certainly it's not something that I want to do. But a couple of things I would share with you, whilst the organisations are looking and really trying hard to manage this balance better, I think there's a couple of things we can do as leaders ourselves, rather than just waiting for the top down. A couple of points I'll share with you that I've really learned a very good lesson from. And the first one is take a look at the job descriptions. being in Germany and Austria these last few years, and I must have interviewed more than a couple of hundred people, to say the least, and I was absolutely flabbergasted that the majority of the applicants were men. And how do I get a gender balance if I'm not even getting women to apply? And after a little bit of thought, and some of these great people who showed me my blind spots asked me to take a look at the job description. And I encourage you to do that in your own workplace. Have a look at the job descriptions and see how many male skill sets potentially are in that job description. And is there something, not to change it to ask women to act like men, not for a second, but that there are also great things that women bring in that perhaps that mightn't be in the skill set. That's the first thing I would share. And the second thing is back to that ambassador role. I really feel that a big part of my job is not just driving teams and developing the people. That's huge, doing the right thing by the customers. But I also feel an ambassador for Western Union, for women who might want to come and join our organisation. And it was really kind to have the feedback, thank you Sharon, around the empathy piece. And it isn't that typical in leadership, but if it's one that people believe that I'm authentic and will be encouraged to join the organisation, then that's something I would really advocate.
Okay, you will get a lot of applications after today.
Bring them on.
Thank you very much. We're coming closer to an end, but I have one question I want to throw at you, but maybe also to others in the call, because I have another very high level management group, and something came up due to the length of the Corona crisis, that more and more leaders feel or have their leaders that they are ahead of, that they get exhausted, that they don't know what to do and how to encourage their staff of managers, and to be resilient. They've all been looking. It came answers like do yoga, get a coach, whatever. But first of all, do you feel this in your organization or with your management team? Because leading a team in home office or online for more than 6 months or almost a year is I think extremely difficult. People that are teaching in colleges that do this online don't even see their students. Others that have to onboard new teams members without even getting in touch with them personally. I heard more than once now that the management staff is really exhausted. And how do you keep the workforce going?
With huge.
What do you do?
Yeah, I keep them going with huge difficulty for sure. I'd love to tell you that I have all the answers and it works perfectly, but I'm just human like the rest of us, and it is exhausting without a doubt. I think the thoughts that you said, people will say bring up yoga or other things. Maybe for each person, not one size fits all. There is maybe some things that people have always wanted to do, that they find that hour or hour and a half each day that they might have been commuting, they get the time back, that they actually use that time for something really valuable to develop themselves. But that could be anything, and reaching out and using these, these great friends and mentors and support to talk about what you could do as a person is really important. But the one thing I find that I didn't do, being an avid traveler and loving to get all over the place, and realizing then you can't really do it and you can't travel as much as you want to. We're all in a bit of danger therefore of working from home so much that we forget to take holidays. And a holiday in the old sense was always something where you go abroad and you get a change of scenery. Now, if it's leaving your living room or leaving your home office or leaving your bedroom, wherever it is that you're working from, you have to, I really believe you have to change the scenery or change the environment and switch off from work. And the power, even if you're still in the four walls of your home, and if we see yet another lockdown or huge restrictions on where we can go, just changing that environment and switching off from Zoom and finding other outlets and other inputs can have a huge value in itself. And And, you know, I really don't have a million answers, but I will never, ever stop talking to those people that I care about. And, you know, the one thing for me, I say the word Zoom again. I have family. I talked about, you know, being brought up at home with this huge, big family. And one of the things that gives me the biggest input each and every week is on a Sunday evening, where my family, be it them in the US, be them in Germany, in Austria, in the UK, in Ireland, wherever, we all find 40 minutes each time to come together and check in with each other and say, how are you doing? Sending little things in the post and little reminders to say, hi, we're all thinking of each other. The power of that, and actually opening up and saying, I'm pretty knackered. How are you feeling? And clinking with a glass of wine and looking into the future has got a huge value.
It was an amazing session with you, Joanne. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. I hope we see each other again, because this is a network. This is, you know, an exchange, a safe room where we can chat and exchange experiences, can be mentors for each other. This is exactly what the Chamber wanted for this format, and we will keep it and continue it. But I really would love to see you all live as soon as possible. We'll keep those formats, the digital, but also we'll go back to luncheons in different cities in Germany, in different cities in the UK. And you are invited, of course, as a guest, as a speaker. But for today's session, thank you very much for this inspiring talk. And I can only say applause from my side, and I think from everybody else.